Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Pooh Part 2. Let's take a glance through the chat, see who is here. Meg Sampson. Let's see. Sonia Kazarova. Hello, Sonia. Ready for Pooh. It's adorable. Angelica Bolschweiler. Are you still up in Big Bear? Hello, Dari. Hello, Charity. Glad to be able to give you a good distraction. Sorry you're having a rough night. Glad you could join us. Hello, Susan Kuhn. Kathy B. My mom, Pam, is here. Ruth Sanchez, hi. Oh, Olive and Ray are both watching. Meow. Meow. Their purry little voices and their tiny little heads. Hello, Amanda Benjamin. Patty Pinkstaff, hi. Kelsey Blaine Gibson. Scrolling. Through the chat, I'm scrolling. All right. Oh, I see Christina. Oh, there's Christina's in the chat. Okay. Hi. And she's asking, I want to know too, is Bay here? I assume Bay's in bed. It's after 9 o'clock California time. Hello, David Benjamin. David, I just saw, I missed an email from you with an Ask Hunter Anything question, and it's a long one that deserves a very well thought out and or researched answer. So, I will, now that I see that I missed that, I will come back and revisit that very soon. Christy Davila. Hello. David, can't wait to get pooed tonight. Well, sir, I hope you're drinking, because you're about to get poo-faced. Yeah. Thought I'd open this evening with a little poetry. We'll break up the poo with some poetry. All right. This guy, this first poem is from a contemporary of William Shakespeare. I love in the movie Shakespeare in Love, they made kind of a rivalry between Shakespeare and this poet and playwright and author known as Christopher Marlowe. Balance my tea. All right. This poem, this opening poem, is called The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that valleys, groves, hills, and fields, woods, or steepy mountain yields. And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals. And I will make thee beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers and a kirtle embroidered all with leaves of myrtle, a gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull. Fair-lined slippers for the cold, with buckets of the purest gold, a belt of straw and ivory buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd swains shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. All right, one more. Oh, David Benjamin is listening to bedtime stories while sitting here playing with Legos. That is wonderful indeed. Wonderful indeed. Oh, and I see that Patty has been a good example to all. Click like, click share, click save to watch later. Pretty please, if you haven't done so already. This is actually an excerpt from Hero and Leander. It lies not in our power to love or hate, by Christopher Marlowe. It lies not in our power to love or hate, for will in us is overruled by fate. When two are stripped, long ere the course begin, we wish that one should lose, the other win. And one especially do we affect, of two gold ingots, like in each respect. The reason no man knows, let it suffice. What we behold is censured by our eyes. We're both deliberate, the love is slight. Whoever loved, that loved not at first sight. Oh, Kit Marlowe, passionate if not a realist. He's also the one that it's the quote from Christopher Marlowe is this: the face that launched 1,000 ships and burned the topless towers of Ilium, from Helen of Troy. Trying to understand that sentence. Ruth Sanchez says, my nano was a shepherd. He used to flirt with her by shaking his fringe on his chaps. Actually, I understood more words out of that than I thought I would once I read it out loud. Okay. So moving on to our first short story of the evening. All right. So, Dari, we might talk a little bit about it. Yeah, something did happen. Something did happen today, but it was probably like the last momentous bit of news from James Webb Space Telescope news for a few months. Yeah, I think, yeah. Today was like the last highlight of news for like a few months. So, okay, David, that was funny. David said, Dari, the Webb telescope is like 1,000,000 miles away. Who cares? Okay. I'm in such a good mood from just reading these stories this afternoon and yesterday. Damn, I love that Pooh in his morning routine does stoutness exercises, whatever that means, and like apparently it consists of counting out loud and bending over and touching his toes, which is rather difficult if you're a Pooh Bear. Stoutness exercises just kills me for some reason. Just okay. I gotta get get these out of my system. So I think I teased in a story on Instagram today as as to the ancient internet conspiracy theory as what species is Piglet? Is he actually a pig? Or is he an armadillo? Stay tuned tonight in Pooh Part 2, and you will learn. Oh, yeah. I've got to get into costume. That's better. And now, Chapter 3 of Winnie the Pooh by A. Milne. Chapter 3 is entitled In Which Pooh and Piglet Go Hunting and Nearly Catch a Woozle. The piglet lived in a very grand house in the middle of a beech tree, and the beech tree was in the middle of the forest, and the piglet lived in the middle of the house. Next to his house was a piece of broken board which had Trespassers W on it. When Christopher Robin asked the piglet what it meant, he said it was his grandfather's name and had been in the family for a long time. Christopher Robin said you couldn't be called Trespassers W, and Piglet said yes, you could, because his grandfather was, and it was short for Trespassers Will, which was short for Trespassers William. And his grandfather had had two names in case he lost one. Trespassers after an uncle, and William after Trespassers. Well, I've got two names, said Christopher Robin carelessly. Well, there you are. That proves it, said Piglet. One fine winter's day, when Piglet was brushing away the snow in front of his house, he happened to look up, and there was Winnie the Pooh. Pooh was walking round and round in a circle, thinking of something else, and when Piglet called to him, he just went on walking. "Hello," said Piglet. "What are you doing?" "I'm hunting," said Pooh. Hunting what?" "Tracking something," said Winnie the Pooh, very mysteriously. Tracking what? Said Piglet, coming closer.
That's just what I ask myself. I ask myself, what?
What do you think you'll answer?
I shall have to wait until I catch up with it,
said Winnie the Pooh.
Now, look there.
He pointed to the ground in front of him.
What do you see?
Tracks, said Piglet. Paw marks. He gave a little squeak of excitement. Oh, Pooh, do you think it's a woozle?
It may be,
said Pooh.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. You can never tell with paw marks.
With these few words, he went on tracking, and Piglet, after watching him for a minute or two, ran after him. Winnie the Pooh had come to a sudden stop and was bending over the tracks in a puzzled sort of way. What's the matter? Asked Piglet.
It's a very funny thing, said Bear. But there seems to be 2 animals now. This whatever it was has been joined by another whatever it is, and the 2 of them are now proceeding in company. Would you mind coming with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile animals?
Piglet scratched his ear in a nice sort of way and said that he had nothing to do until Friday and would be delighted to come in case it really was a woozle.
You mean in case it really is 2 woozles?
Said Winnie the Pooh. And Piglet said that anyhow he had nothing to do until Friday. So off they went together. There was a small spinney, which is a British word for small area of trees. There was a small spinney of larch trees just here, and it seemed as if the 2 woozles, if that is what they were, had been going around this spinney. So round this spinney went Pooh and Piglet after him. Piglet passing the time by telling Pooh what his grandfather Trespassers W had done to remove stiffness after tracking, and how his grandfather Trespassers W had suffered in his later years from shortness of breath and other matters of interest, and Pooh, wondering what a grandfather was like, and if perhaps this was 2 grandfathers they were after now, and if so, whether he would be allowed to take one home and keep it, and what Christopher Robin would say. And still the tracks went on in front of them. Suddenly, Winnie the Pooh stopped, pointed excitedly in front of them. Look! What? Said Piglet, with a jump. And then, to show that he hadn't been frightened, he jumped up and down once or twice more in an exercising sort of way.
The tracks,
said Pooh.
A 3rd animal has joined the other 2.
Pooh! Cried Piglet. Do you think it's another woozle?
No,
said Pooh,
because it makes different marks. It is either 2 woozles and 1, as it might be, whizzle, or 2, as it might be, whizzles, and 1, if so it is, woozle. Let's continue to follow them.
So they went on, feeling just a little anxious now, in case the 3 animals in front of them were of hostile intent. And Piglet wished very much that his grandfather T.W. were there instead of elsewhere, and Pooh thought how nice it would be if they met Christopher Robin suddenly, but quite accidentally, and only because he liked Christopher Robin so much. And then, all of a sudden, Winnie the Pooh stopped again and licked the tip of his nose in a cooling manner, for he was feeling more hot and anxious than ever in his life before. There were 4 animals in front of them now.
Do you see, Piglet? Look at their tracks. 3, as it were, woozles, and 1, as it was, whizzle. Another woozle has joined them.
And so it seemed to be. There were the tracks, crossing over each other here, getting muddled up with each other there, but quite plainly, every now and then, the tracks of 4 sets of paws. "I think," said Piglet, when he had licked the tip of his nose, too, and found that it brought very little comfort. "I think that I've just remembered something. I have just remembered something that I forgot to do yesterday, and I shan't be able to go and do it tomorrow, so I suppose I really ought to go back and do it now."
We'll do it this afternoon, and I'll come with you,
said Pooh.
"It isn't the sort of thing that you could do in the afternoon,"
said Piglet quickly.
"It's a very particular morning thing. It has to be done in the morning, and possible, if possible, between the hours of... What would you say the time was?"
About 12,
said Winnie the Pooh, looking at the sun.
"Between, as I was saying, the hours of 12 and 12:05. So, really, dear old Pooh, if you'll excuse me... What's that?"
Pooh looked up into the sky, and then, as he heard the whistle again, he looked up into the branches of a big oak tree. And then he saw a friend of his.
It's Christopher Robin,
he said.
"Ah, well then you'll be all right,"
said Piglet,
"You'll be quite safe with him. Goodbye."
and he trotted off home as quickly as he could, very glad to be out of all danger again. Christopher Robin came slowly down his tree. "Silly old bear," he said, "what were you doing? First, you went round the spiny twice by yourself. Then Piglet ran after you, and you went round again together. And then you were just going round a 4th time."
Wait a moment,
said Winnie the Pooh, holding up his paw. He sat down and thought, in the most thoughtful way he could think. Then he fitted his paw into one of the tracks. Then he scratched his nose twice and stood up.
Yeah, I see now,
said Winnie the Pooh.
I've been foolish and deluded,
said he.
And I am a bear of no brain at all.
You're the best bear in all the world, said Christopher Robin soothingly.
Am I?
Said Pooh, hopefully, and then he brightened up suddenly.
Anyhow,
he said,
it's nearly luncheon time.
So he went home for it. The end. Okay, that's one that made me laugh out loud, to kind of piece together that they were tracking. First track, Pooh was just sort of tracking himself, seeing his own footprints. And then he's tracking both of them, and Piglet's not quite bright enough to figure out that these are just their prints together. And then they start going in circles around things and are freaking themselves out with their own footprints because the footprints keep multiplying every time they take another lap around the... Okay, that's just... yeah. Adorable. Just what else can you say? Just too cute. Alrighty. Oh, that's adorable. Christina says, what's funny is when you read these, I remember the episodes with these stories. I vaguely remember seeing like animated yeah, I mean, I remember stills of like Pooh dressed up as the rain cloud from from the first one. And I think iconically, I remember the original just black and white line drawing illustrations that are included in the book most of all, because they're just, I don't know, they're so simply drawn and they're just so iconic. I'm sure we've seen him on T-shirts all our lives, or who knows. All right. So, here's a poet that never read anything from before, not that I recall. Eleanor Wiley was born in 1885 and didn't make it quite through all of the Roaring '20s, but that meant she didn't have to see the Great Depression. She died in 1928, so she was pretty young when she shuffled off this mortal coil. Eleanor Wiley, who was born with the last name of Hoyt, was born into a socially prominent family, and because of her father's political aspirations, Eleanor spent much of her youth in Washington, D.C., attending private schools while growing into a debutante in the midst of the city's most prominent social elite, being trained for the life of a debutante and a society wife, but she rebelled and became notorious for her multiple affairs and multiple marriages. Eleanor spent time in literary circles in New York City with the likes of John Dos Passos and Sinclair Lewis. Her literary friends encouraged her to submit her verse to Poetry magazine, including what became her most widely anthologized poem entitled Velvet Shoes in 1920. So let's see, in 1920, she must have been 35. She captivated the literary world with her slender, tawny-haired beauty, personal elegance, acid wit, and technical virtuosity. Eleanor Wiley's literary output is impressive, given that her writing career lasted just 8 years. In that brief period, she crowded 4 volumes of poems, 4 novels, and a lot of magazine articles. Critics described her writings as highly polished, articulate, and deeply emotional verse. Another one said, influence of the metaphysical poets such as John Donne, who I've read on this show several times. No Man is an Island. Andrew Marvell, To His Coy Mistress, Had We But World Enough and Time. Both of these poets I've read on Fireside Tales. If her poetry is derivative of anyone, that would be of the British Romantic poets, and particularly of Percy Shelley, who I just spoke about last week. He was married to Mary Shelley, and yes, this lady just deeply admired Percy Shelley. Other critics said she had a fiery intellect, dazzling craftsmanship, at times the creative genius, intensity, piercing clarity. So extravagantly praised in her lifetime, Wiley suffered a posthumous reversal in her reputation, but has experienced something of a revival of interest among feminist critics since the 1980s. I'm just going to read one of these and launch into the next short story. Hello, Kimmy Chameleon. Glad you are here. Oh, thank you, Dari. I don't have the virtual tip jar up. And while we're at it, if you have a question to submit to Ask Hunter Anything, it's in this corner. Oh. Thank you for the reminder. This poem is called Velvet Shoes. It was published in 1921, written by Eleanor Wiley. Let us walk in the white snow in a soundless space, with footsteps quiet and slow at a tranquil pace. Under veils of white lace, I shall go shod in ink, and you in wool, white as a white cow's milk, more beautiful than the breast of a gull. We shall walk through the still town in windless peace. We shall step upon white down, upon silver fleece, upon softer than these. We shall walk in velvet shoes wherever we go. Silence will fall like dews on the white silence below. We shall walk in the snow. Oh my God, that's okay. One more, then we'll go to the next short story. One more, because that was so incredible, man. Okay, this next one is called Madman's Song by Eleanor Wiley. Better to see your cheek grown hollow, better to see your temple worn than to forget to follow, follow after the sound of a silver horn. Better to bind your brow with willow and follow, follow until you die, than to sleep with your head on a golden pillow, nor lift it up when the hunt goes by. Better to see your cheek grow sallow, and your hair grown gray so soon, than to forget to hollow, hollow, after the milk-white hounds of the moon. Yeah. Eleanor Wiley. And I think we'll come back to another poem of hers in a little while, called A Proud Lady. Oh, thank you, Christina. That is adorable. This is indeed poetry. We've had poems. We've had poems. We've had poems, and now poetry. That's adorable. Yeah. All right. Hello, Roberta Acuna. Greetings and salutations. Dari made it up. Christina just defined it. Okay, gotcha. Poetry. Credit where credit is due, including definitions. That's a good definition. Okay. If you will allow me to get into costume. We can now continue to Pooh. Okay. So we're gonna meet a couple of my favorite characters in this one. Thank you, Dari. Where credit is Pooh, indeed. Okay. This is chapter. This is chapter 4. God. Edgar Allan Poe didn't make me giggle like this. This is chapter 4 of A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh. Chapter 4, in which Eeyore loses a tail and Pooh finds one. The old grey donkey, Eeyore, stood by himself in a thistly corner of the forest, his front feet well apart, his head on one side, and thought about things. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, "Why?" And sometimes he thought, "Wherefore?" And sometimes he thought, "Inasmuch as what?" And sometimes he didn't quite know what he was thinking about. So, when Winnie the Pooh came stumping along, Eeyore was very glad to be able to stop thinking for a little while in order to say, "How do you do?" in a gloomy manner to him.
And how are you?
Said Winnie the Pooh. Eeyore shook his head from side to side. "Not very, how?" he said. "I don't seem to have felt at all how for a long, long time."
Dear,
said Pooh.
I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you.
So, Eeyore stood there, gazing sadly at the ground, and Winnie the Pooh walked all round him once.
Why, what's happened to your tail?
He said in surprise. "What has happened to it?" said Eeyore.
It isn't there.
"You sure?"
Well, either a tail is there or it isn't there. You can't make a mistake about that. And yours isn't here.
"Then what is?"
Nothing,
"Let's have a look," said Eeyore, and he turned slowly round to the place where his tail had been a little while ago, and then, finding that he couldn't catch it up, he turned round the other way until he came back to where he was at first, and then he put his head down and looked between his front legs, and at last he said, with a long, sad sigh, "I do believe you're right,"
Of course I'm right.
said Pooh. "That counts for a good deal of stuff," said Eeyore, gloomily. "It explains everything. No wonder,"
You must have left it somewhere.
said Winnie the Pooh. "Somebody must have taken it," said Eeyore. "How just like them," he added after a long silence. Pooh felt that he ought to say something helpful about it, but didn't quite know what, so he decided to do something helpful instead.
Eeyore?
He said solemnly.
I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you.
"Well, thank you, Pooh," answered Eeyore. "You're a real friend," said he. "Not like some," said he. So, Winnie the Pooh went off to find Eeyore's tail. It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Little soft clouds played happily in a blue sky, skipping from time to time in front of the sun as if they had come to put it out and then sliding away suddenly so that the next might have his turn. Through them and between them the sun shone bravely, and a copse which had worn its furs all the year round seemed old and dowdy now beside the new green lace which the beeches had put on so prettily. Through copse and spinney marched Bear, down open slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone, into the heather again, and so, at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood. For it was in the 100-acre wood that Owl lived.
And if anyone knows anything about anything,
said Bear to himself,
it's Owl who knows something about something,
he said.
Or my name's not Winnie the Pooh,
he said.
Which it is,
he added.
So there you are.
Owl lived at the Chestnuts, an old-world residence of great charm, which was grander than anybody else's, or seemed so to Bear, because it had both a knocker and a bell pull. Underneath the knocker there was a notice which said, in letters spelt out as though written by someone rather new to the art of spelling, "Please ring if an answer is required." Underneath the bell pull there was a notice which similarly said, "Please knock if an answer is not required." These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell, for Owl, wise though he was in many ways, able to read and write and spell his own name, W-O-L, yet somehow went all to pieces over delicate words like measles and buttered toast. Winnie the Pooh read the two notices very carefully, first from left to right, and afterwards, in case he had missed some of it, from right to left. Then, to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and then he pulled and knocked the bell rope, and he called out in a very loud voice,
Owl, I require an answer. It's Bear speaking.
And the door opened, and Owl looked out. "Hello, Pooh," he said. "How are things?"
Terrible and sad,
said Pooh.
Because Eeyore, who's a friend of mine, has lost his tail, and he's moping about it. Could you very kindly tell me how to find it for him?
"Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is as follows."
What does crustamony proceed cake mean?
said Pooh.
For I am a bear of very little brain, and long words bother me.
"It means the thing to do,"
As long as it means that, I don't mind,
said Pooh humbly. "The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward. Then..."
Wait, just a moment,
said Pooh, holding up his paw.
What do we do to this? What were you saying? You sneezed just as you were going to tell me.
"I didn't sneeze."
Yes, you did, Owl.
"Excuse me, Pooh. I didn't. You can't sneeze without knowing it."
Well, you can't know it without something having been sneezed.
"What I said was first issue a reward,"
You're doing it again,
said Pooh sadly. A reward, said Owl very loudly. We write a notice to say that we will give a large something to anybody who finds Eeyore's tail.
I see,
Said Pooh, nodding his head.
Talking about large somethings,
He went on dreamily.
I generally have a small something about now, about this time in the morning.
And he looked wistfully at a cupboard in the corner of Owl's parlor.
Just a mouthful of condensed milk or whatnot, with perhaps a lick of honey.
Well then, said Owl, we write out this notice, and we put it up all over the forest.
A lick of honey.
Murmured Bear to himself.
Or not, as the case may be.
And he gave a deep sigh, and tried very, very hard to listen to what Owl was saying. But Owl went on and on, using longer and longer words, until at last he came back to where he started, and he explained that the person to write out this notice was Christopher Robin. It was he who wrote the ones on my front door for me. Did you see them, Pooh? For some time now, Pooh had been saying,
Yes.
and
No.
in turn with his eyes shut to all that Owl was saying, and having said,
Yeah.
the last time, he said,
No. Not at all.
now without really knowing what Owl was talking about. Didn't you see them? Said Owl, a little surprised. Come and look at them now. So they went outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it, and he looked at the bell rope and the notice below it. And the more he looked at the bell rope, the more he felt that he had seen something like it somewhere else, sometime before. Handsome bell rope, isn't it? Said the Owl, and Pooh nodded.
It reminds me of something,
He said,
but I can't think what. Where did you get it?
I just came across it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush, and I thought at first somebody lived there, so I rang it, and nothing happened. Then I rang it again very loudly, and it came off in my hand, and as nobody seemed to want it, I took it home.
Owl,
Pooh said solemnly.
you made a mistake. Somebody did want it.
Who?
Eeyore. My dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it.
Fond of it,
Attached to it.
added Winnie the Pooh, sadly. So, with these words, he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore. And when Christopher Robin had nailed it on its right place again, Eeyore frisked about in the forest, waving his tail so happily that Winnie the Pooh came over all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack of something to sustain him. And, wiping his mouth, half an hour afterwards, he sang to himself proudly,
Who found the tail? I said Pooh at 2:15.
only it was 11:15, really.
I found the tail.
Adorable. Just adorable. Okay. gonna take a moment to scroll back up through the chat. Oh, yes. Okay, Christina is saying, definitely remember this episode of the cartoon. Yeah, that it's pretty hard to forget Eeyore with the missing tail and just kind of his bare naked butt. Cute, David. Eeyore would make a great spy. Nobody would be able to tail him. What knockers? There's your young Dr. Frankenstein quote for the night. Indeed, excellent context, because just like young Frankenstein, he was actually about knockers.
It's Bear speaking.
What Hunter's neighbors think right about now is as little as possible. It's way too hot inside this place with this bear suit, but I have to have all the doors and windows shut so that we don't hear the various car alarms and planes flying, all those things. Christina's changing her name to Christina Raven. It's kind of hot. Yeah. Okay, so, Bay says, thank you. Is Bay still awake? She better not be. Oh, you're going to hate tomorrow if she is. Bay's my goddaughter. I'm thrilled that she's watching, or would be just as or more thrilled if she was watching the replay tomorrow. In any case, hi, Bay. I love you. Hi, Bay. Okay, so it's almost 10 o'clock. Update for the James Webb Telescope is that the third course correction booster firing was scheduled to happen today, as the James Webb Space Telescope was pulling up to its destination orbit of Lagrange point 2. And as far as I know, although I didn't check for an update right before the beginning of the show, everything is probably just fine. There were literally several hundred steps previous to this one that have come off not only without a hitch, but better than designed for necessarily or expecting. And this one was just a simple drop in the hat by comparison. So next, it's going to require about 5 months of calibration of all the different scientific equipment and the lining up of the mirrors. So the huge golden mirror made out of hexagons that you've maybe seen pictures of, all those individual mirrors are individually slightly like adjustable. So if this thing had need of visual correction the same way that the Hubble originally did, it can correct itself. And that's what they're going to spend the next 5 months lining up and calibrating for. Hi from Bay. Hi, Bay. But she wants me, Bay is watching, but she wants me to grow, wants my hair to grow back and have a beard again. Oh, that's okay. Tell her Bay, I'm working on it. Man, I just trimmed my beard a little bit right before the show too, but okay. Coming back round. So, Nick Davila, it's a strange orbit. I'm still trying to understand it. I've explained on past shows kind of what's going on with Lagrange point number 2. I studied this in great detail as part of my bachelor's degree and in physics. But the 10-second description is that there is a gravitationally stable point. If you line up the sun, the earth, and then this point where the James Webb is going to, that's Lagrange point number 2. There are similar stable points between the sun and the earth. There's a Lagrange point here. There's another one on the other side of the sun. So like earth, sun, here's another one. And then there are a couple others that are that share an orbit with the Earth, but are a particular distance from the Earth. As a matter of fact, it's the same distance as the sun is from the Earth. Make an equilateral triangle, so a triangle with 3 legs that are all the same length, 3 exact angles, 3 exactly congruent internal angles of 60 degrees. There's another Lagrange point, and then of course there's another Lagrange point exactly that same way following Earth's orbit. So one of those precedes the Earth, the other one follows the Earth. But yeah, it is, so the L2 or Lagrange point 2 gravitational point is a point that is going to be in a solar orbit, just like all the planets. By contrast, the Hubble Space Telescope is in an Earth orbit. As a matter of fact, it's in what we call a low Earth orbit. The Hubble Space Telescope is usually around 240, 250 miles above the surface of the Earth, give or take. The James Webb is a lot farther away. The James Webb Space Telescope is about 1 million miles away. It's so far away that we don't have spacecraft that we can just send to it to do any fixes. So we had to get this thing right on the first time. Okay, that was a lot more than 10 seconds, but I'll stand by that answer. So I'm going to close with another poem by Eleanor Wiley. And, you know, I'm just having so much fun with these Pooh stories. I think I'm going to do a third one of these next week. There are a lot more Winnie the Pooh stories that we have not gotten to. This poem is called A Proud Lady by Eleanor Wiley. Hate in the world's hand can carve and set its seal like the strong blast of sand which cuts into steel. I have seen how the finger of hate can mar and mold faces burned passionate and frozen cold. Sorrowful faces worn as stone with rain, faces writhing with scorn and sullen with pain. But you have a proud face, which the world cannot harm, and have turned the pain to a grace and the scorn to a charm. You've taken the arrows and slings which prick and bruise and fashioned them into wings for the heels of your shoes from the world's hand which tries to tear you apart, and have stolen the falcon's eyes and the lion's heart. What it has done, this world with hard fingertips, but sweetly chiseled and curled your inscrutable lips. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will pull it into the station there. Join us for Lovecast 91 this Thursday at 6. And let's see, tomorrow night is Tuesday. Tomorrow night, I believe David Benjamin's doing a Panano Man tomorrow night, right? And I believe also it is still in the works as far as I know. I believe there's going to be a Deep Cuts tomorrow night after David's show, also on the Vaudacity Network. Wednesday, Miss Amanda Benjamin is back with Amanda on Demanda at 7:30.
Elton night.
What?
Elton night.
Elton John night. And, of course, Lovecast 91 on Thursday at 6 o'clock. Thank you all for joining us for this week's installation of Pooh. Come back tomorrow. Come back next week.
Oh, and you know what?
And we'll do another couple more Pooh
There's
stories.
also a cove after you on Thursday.
And Paul Carganilla is doing another installation of The Cove
Return to the Cove. It's his 1 year
on
anniversary.
Thursday. Oh, that's right. I'll be on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Thursday after the Lovecast, stay on the Vaudacity Network, and Paul Carganilla's solo show will have guests, and I'll be one of them. Thank you all very much. Love you all. Good night.